Hi there, this is Cindy, and I had an idea how to convert a C2C chart into a mosaic chart. Normally when you do a C2C, you'd start in the corner and work your way diagonal like this. And each square is the equivalent of 4 double crochets. So what I want to do for this chart that I created is I want to convert it into mosaic. And so this would be, fairly large. It would be 4 DCs times 19, so whatever that is, roughly just short of 80, 80 stitches across times 4 times 25, so this would be about 80 by 100. Because remember, each square is equivalent to 4 double crochets and 4 rows. So what I want to do is, the easiest way to do this is you may want to print this out fairly large, and you want to get a ruler and a pen, or you could use Excel or something else. You just need to have a way to draw lines, because we're going to add some lines to this chart to make it easy to convert into mosaic. So I'm going to zoom in on the top. Okay, I've zoomed in on the chart a bit, and so what I want to do is I want to draw 2 lines through each of these rows. When I convert this chart, I want each square to be 3 double crochets, because in mosaic, 1 double crochet goes over the span of 3 rows. Let's pretend these squares right here are a typical mosaic, a typical overlay mosaic, where this would be a double crochet stitched into this stitch, this would be a double crochet stitched into this stitch, and this would be a double crochet stitched into this stitch. And this was the B row of single crochets. So each double crochet has to take up the span of 3 rows. If I want to make a square, I have to have 3 double crochets in a row, which makes a square. So that's normally with an overlay double crochet. But since this is a C2C chart, I'm assuming you would want to make it the same size as the C2C. So what you could do for each square, instead of being a 4 double crochet square and then the next one is going the opposite direction, well, actually you're going diagonal from here to here to here to here, just go with 3 double crochets. They'll be squares if you go with 3 double crochets. You may end up with a slightly smaller project, but to convert into mosaic, that is just part of the cost of trying to convert it, the cost of conversion. And if you want, you can always add an extra border. So what I am proposing that will work is we want to draw 2 lines in each row. And because remember, each square is not equivalent to 1 stitch like we're doing overlay mosaic. In a C2C, each square is equivalent to 4 double crochets. So if we want something sort of equivalent, we're going to do 3 double crochets in each square, because 3 double crochets will create a square in overlay mosaic. Hope that makes sense, but let me show you. I'll add lines to this and maybe it will make more sense. So again, you can take a printout of your chart, or you can, put it in Excel, recreate it in Excel. So I'm just going to sort of eyeball, it doesn't really matter. I'm going to eyeball about 1/3 of the way down for my row up here. And I'm just going to draw this line all the way across and let go. And then I'm going to copy this line in Excel. If you highlight the line, you'll see that it's highlighted here, and now if I copy it and paste it, it creates an extra line. I'm just going to use my arrow keys to position it to where it's another 1/3 of the way down, roughly. It doesn't have to be perfect. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep copying and pasting and using my arrows to get every single row accounted for. And remember, because you're converting these, it's going to take some time, to get this kind of looking exactly the same. I'm not changing any proportions here, which is really nice. Sometimes when you convert a chart in mosaic, you end up changing proportions. But in this case, it's really not going to change the proportion of the design. It will just change the overall size of the project slightly, because you're going to have 3 double crochets in each square rather than 4 double crochets in each square. So I'm just copying, pasting, and just using my arrow keys to move these down through each row. And this may take you some time if it's a fairly large chart. But once you are done, then you have something totally ready to go, and it will make sense. And part of the thing with C2C's conversion process is going to be figuring out how to change your colors and how to arrange your colors. Some of the colors will be pretty obvious as far as what is your row B, which I always think of row B as the background. So obviously in this chart, I would say white is the obvious background color. So white is the obvious B color. The flower has 3 colors. It has green, pink, and yellow. And sometimes if you have, let's say if this yellow square was surrounded by some pink, I would go ahead and make this yellow square be part of the B row, because the pink would be part of the A row. But I mean, you're just going to have to experiment with what looks the best. In this case, I probably would do all my colors in the A rows, and then the white would be all the background colors. And so I'd have to somehow switch colors. After I got done with these 3 front loop double crochets, I'd have to switch color to pink. So I would do, at the very end of the last green front loop double crochet, when I had 2 loops left on the hook, that's when I'd want to yarn over with the pink. That creates a really clean transition. So anyway, once we get all our lines on there, and remember it's going to be 2 lines per row. I'm going to zoom in a little bit more now. So we may want to draw lines up and down, but if you just remember each square is going to be 3 front loop single crochets, then you probably don't have to draw the vertical lines. So what we're going to do is we're going to now determine which is going to be our A rows and which are going to be our B rows. If we look over here, it looks like we want to do this square up here. So this tells me this row is going to be an A row. And again, with Excel, you may want to insert cells, or you may want to print this out and just write it down. So this would be an A row, this top one. This would be a B row. This would be an A row. And so now we can just do the front loop double crochets here, here, here. And then we may want to have one more row of the B row to, you know, account for where, because otherwise this will just be a back loop in the A color and then you would see it. So you probably want to do one more row of B to just kind of cover up that back loop and form a nice border around everything. And so this is where you're going to have to kind of play with the design, because obviously if we have this being a front loop double crochet, this is an A row, B row, A row, that has to be a B row. So we can't really do this color until we get down here. But it gives you a little bit of sort of a guideline. And of course we're starting at the bottom. So let's pretend we have our lines here, which I'll get those down there really quick. Okay, so I got a few more lines here. So I always like to start with the background color first. So this is going to be row number 1. This will be row number 2, row number 3, row number 4. In our C2C chart, you probably need to just get rid of, you know, right over these numbers here so you don't confuse yourself. You may want to print out the chart. It may be easier to print the chart out, draw lines with a pencil and ruler, and then just label here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your odd numbered rows will be your B rows. Your even numbered rows will be your A rows. And you're just going to stitch along 3 double crochets, 3 stitches per square. So 3. You start out with 3 single crochets, 3, 3, 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and so on. when you get here, because you're in your B row, just do it in the same color that you're already in your B row. Because again, this is a mosaic conversion, you're not going to get it exact. You do your A row in green, and then your third row, which is a B row, because you want this to be a white square, you're going to do 3 front loop double crochets, 3 more front loop double crochets, 3 more front loop double crochets, all the way to here. When you get here, because this is green and that's the A color, we're just going to do 3 back loops single crochets, and then again here front loop double crochets, and go all the way to the end of the row. And so you're going to have to kind of play with it. If it's easier, you may want to draw your X's in, but in a conversion, it's not going to necessarily be all that easy to draw all of them. But just remember, when you get to the color that you want to see, you want a front loop double crochet. And here, because it's white, when we're using green for our A rows, we know we don't want to see green here, so just do single crochets, the back loop single crochets. And then when we get to the green areas, and we're in our background color, our B color, we know we don't want to see the background color here, so just do single crochets. Hopefully that makes sense. And as you climb up, keep going. I didn't draw more lines, but you're just going to go square by square, row by row, trying to get whatever color you see here in the C2C square. You want that to match whatever yarn you're using, whatever row you're on. So if you're on your B row and that is the background color, obviously do your front loop double crochets. And if you get to the A color, you know, you want to do the front loop double crochets during the A rows, not the B rows. When you get to any rows where you see green here, but you're in a B row, so you obviously can't do a front loop double crochet here. There's not going to be any front loops to stitch into in the A color, because this, you know, might happen to be a B row. Don't worry about it. Again, the conversion may tweak the design just a little bit. Just do it up here, you know. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a pretty close facsimile of the design. So let's just say this was a B row. Just continue your front loop double crochets to make this part white. Because if you just did back loop single crochets, you'd see green right here, and we don't want to see green here. So really, you're kind of looking at the row below it to tell you what you need to do. If the row below, let's say this was a B row right here, the row below it is the background color, we have to do a front loop double crochet here. Even though on this chart it's green, but again, we're going to have to tweak the design a little bit. And so then in this next row, because we want it to be green, we go ahead and you know, stitch back loop single crochets, because these would be front loop double crochets. But then when we got to this row, we could do the front loop double crochet that would fill in this whole area. So you're kind of moving the squares by adding these extra lines. So you're kind of changing the positions of these squares by adding these lines, because you're now making 3 rows out of each square. So sometimes the color of that square is going to have to be just moved up by 1 row. And so the top of this square may end up being right here instead, if this happens to be an A row. So you'll just have to kind of go along and see what it looks like as you stitch it up. You'll just have to kind of, when you get to the spot you need to be, remember, like if this is an A row and we see below it, we see right below this row is green, we know we have to do a front loop double crochet in this row. Even though it's a white square, because it's the A row, it has to be a front loop double crochet to fill in this green area here. We may just have to bump up some of the design part into the next row above it. And you'll have to do that with the background as well. So for instance, this one, if it's a B row, let's say this was an A row right here, and normally for, you know, if it's the background color for an A row, we'd want a back loop double crochet. But then we got up here, which is a B row, because it's green, which is normally the A color, you would think in the B row you'd do a back loop single crochet. However, if you did that, this green would show from the A row. So in this case, we have to bump up the square and make this a front loop double crochet to go into the square right below it. So in some parts of the design, you're going to be bumping it up by 1 row just to make the colors come out right. That's just part of the way this conversion is going to have to happen with a C2C converted to an overlay mosaic. As you go, you may get the hang of it, and you know what? If you want to recreate this into Excel, you may just want to recolor these little sections, or if you print it out and you have some highlighters or something, you may just want to recolor them so they're the right color. Anyway, I hope that made sense. Converting from C2C to Mosaic is going to be a bit of a process, but I think if you just take some time and map it all out, and then sometimes when you get to a certain spot, you may need to just kind of work it out, and if it, work out part of the row, see what it looks like. If you don't like how it's looking, just frog out that little section and try it again. So the basics of this are each square should be 3 rows and 3 front loop double crochets to fill in this square of color. And again, sometimes you'll have to bump up the color to the next row above it to get whatever color is right below that row. And you'll see as you stitch, if you were to stitch back loop double crochets here because you thought you needed to leave this pink, you would see that this was actually whatever you had in the previous row. So you'll kind of see it as you go. And while we were stitching our A rows, let's say we had a color change right here. Sometimes if you have enough of one color surrounding another color, you may want to make this color be part of the B row. In this particular design, I think it might be easier doing it during the A rows, and then we would just take, stitch our A rows here in pink. We'd make a transition to yellow right here. Once again, we have 3 stitches here. So we'd make the transition at the end of whichever stitch was here. When you have 2 loops left on your hook, you'd yarn over with the new color and then continue those stitches, and then you do the same process to get back to the original color. If, let's say, all the squares surrounding the yellow were pink, then we may be able to do the pink during the white rows. And then you would switch from the background during the stitches here where they'd be hidden because these would be pink. And then you could transition to the yellow and then do this part in yellow, transition back to the background color during these stitches, which again would be hidden by the pink rows. So that's just another option. In this particular design, because they're white, I would say it's easier to transition during the A rows, but it's just going to be kind of on a pattern by pattern basis where when you should switch colors, if you should switch colors, which rows should you switch colors. So yeah, that's just another part of the conversion process. Hope that all makes sense. Anyway, good luck.